Oh, uh-oh.
I'm angry. I get my grape face.
Would you this is kind of like a preview into our gripes. Would you say that you're serving gripe face right now?
My grapes are eating. Is
Yeah,
that
your
is that
grapes
thing?
ate.
No? My grapes ate.
Yeah, I don't like
I
any of
don't like
these.
that either. No,
I don't
reserve
like
seating
any of
starts
this.
right now.
So hello everybody, welcome to Reserve Seating. We are here for our annual Gripe Fest. Gripe
You've
House.
entered the Gripe Fest in the Gripehouse. I like
Yeah,
that better, actually. Yeah,
there's a gripe festival.
yeah. In the
One day
'90s,
only.
we had House Party.
Yeah.
Now we have Grape Party in the Grape House. What did we say it was? Adam, if anybody is new to the Gripe House, and if
Yeah.
this is your first time in the Gripe House, you have to gripe.
For anybody new to the Gripe House, what this is it's not that we don't complain at other parts of the year, but this is an episode dedicated to complaining about trends in movie going, the movie industry, specific movies, artists, stuff like that, things that are grinding our gears.
It's an airing of the grievances. We are just this is an opportunity, and we hope that those of you watching don't judge us too harshly. We are normally, I think, a pretty diplomatic program. We do our best to be nice, kind of. We try to take things at face value and assume good intentions on the part of everybody. But this is where all the complaints, all that stores here.
I agree. Cosign, rubber stamp.
Rubber
So,
stamp.
Rob, what's your first gripe of 2024?
All right, so gripes. Let's start with like an easy one, a kind of a just a light one, a light aperitif, if you will. Um, I'm pretty sick of if you follow any of the major studios or major distributors or anything like that. Specifically, Netflix is kind of who I'm really going after with this gripe. The social media interns or the social media managers who try to make memes out of like shows as if they're people who watch the show and they're memeing about it. This whole sort of disingenuous thing where you're trying to provoke a conversation, I understand that's their job. But it's bullshit, folks, and stop buying into it. If a show or a movie isn't good enough to provoke genuine conversation from its audience, then that's a bigger problem, and we're not going to solve it with a social media intern pretending and using sort of buzzy words and creating screenshots and memes and stuff that they hope will go viral. It's all bullshit, as George Carlin said, and it's bad for you.
My first gripe is this is a last minute addition. I just wrote Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool voice because I'm tired of hearing everything from a Heineken commercial to a Don't Talk ad to a actual content from the Deadpool Wolverine movie being a wispy tease out of the mouth of Ryan Reynolds. Just
I
shut up,
love.
bro. It's like in the early 2000s when you would go to a bar and you would have one friend who would do an effeminate voice to try to make you embarrassed.
Right.
It's that, but it's the most successful movie probably of 2024.
My next one is uh, petty, as a lot of these are, and
Yeah.
stupid, and in some ways targeting myself on this.
Okay.
I'm not above this. I'm not above. I consider myself a pretty self-aware person, pretty hard on myself, and but I will say that this is something I'm seeing across the podcasting spectrum. And it's something that bothers me because I listen to a great deal of podcasts in the car. I listen to a great deal of my podcasts in the car while driving on major highways because I do a lot of travel to visit family. And if we as a collective, and again, I'm going to include myself here, I'm not going to speak for you, but I'm going to include myself. If we as a collective of, I'm not going to call us content creators because fuck that, um, people who talk about things in videos and on podcasts, if we could do our best to work on our dynamics, our enunciation, our level of volume of speaking,
Hmm.
There's a very, very popular movie podcast that everyone knows, but I'm not going to cite by name because you'll probably know it. Um, in in which the one of these speakers habitually will speak under his breath or away from the microphone, or will sort of do that lilting kind of speech enunciation where a point will be made, and then can you go into the F This Movie archives and find an example of me doing that? Absolutely. I am absolutely, but it is something I am conscious and doing my best to work on. So um, I understand that I'm a person who speaks professionally for a living. I'm a teacher. I talk all day. I understand not everybody has those things, nor should they have to in order to podcast. But if we could make, as a collective, again, a conscious effort to work on dynamics, work on enunciation, speak our words at the volume where people can hear them. Because as anybody who's ever tried to listen to the radio when you're driving, that dull roar of the ground below you basically cuts out the bottom end of a lot of what you're listening to. And if I'm driving with family in the car, I can't necessarily crank the volume up while somebody's like, talking about, whatever, Maxine or something like that, if other people in the car don't want to hear that. So I recognize it's petty. I recognize I'm guilty of it, but that's my second grade.
It's funny that our first set of gripes are all about sounds
Audio
because
related? Yeah.
I have three more that are related to sounds of things.
Let's just do it.
So,
Let's just stay on
right.
those.
The first one is all right. So I saw the Bike Riders last
Yeah.
week, which it's just a movie which I like. I do like the Bike Riders, but Jodie Comer is doing a Dennis Franz voice. Tom Hardy is doing what I wrote down as Brando Weasel Baby. Nobody else in the movie is doing a Chicago dialect. So I asked the question, if nobody else is doing it, why do you think that you need to? And I've heard the debate like, oh no, actually Jodie Comer sounds exactly like the woman she's playing. It's like, yeah, but you don't have to. Look at Ridley Scott's answer about The Last Duel. It
Right.
doesn't make it any better if they're doing a French dialect. It's worse. It's distracting. So just talk like you normally would talk. Although I get it with Jodie Comer and Tom Hardy, they're British, so maybe they decided to do it, but it's weird that they leaned in and nobody else felt like they needed to. Okay, another one is Rob, have you seen the trailer for Sing Sing?
I watched it today because I knew you were going to mention this.
Okay, so I've seen the trailer for Sing Sing before most movies I see,
Okay.
and I'm tired of it. Nothing against the movie Sing Sing. I'm sure it's good. I like Paul Raci. It's
I've
all
heard
fun.
very good things about it.
But there's two lines of dialogue in it that I've heard so many times that I say them to myself at home when I'm by myself, and I hate it. So one is when he goes, "I'm Prince Hamlet of Denmark." So I say that sometimes just like while I'm walking around, just
Yourself.
making lunch.
Yeah.
And another one, I realize I do a pretty good Coleman Domingo because I always will say to myself, I'm like, "You did your thing, beloved." And I'm just like, what is happening? This movie needs to stop trailering so I can have sanity again. And then lastly, for sounds, I rewatched Toy Story,
Mm.
which would be a perfect movie if not for Randy Newman's songs.
Yes.
Um,
Right.
I don't mind the writing. He's a very obviously a gifted songwriter. I just think that his voice sounds like if you're drowning Robert Wool in a bubble bath. In the end credits, I think it's Lyle Lovett. I could be wrong. And Randy Newman singing "You've Got a Friend in Me." And whenever it's like Lyle Lovett singing it, it's like a balm to your ears. It's like, oh,
Sure.
thank you. But when Randy Newman, he's just like, "You got a friend in me," and I'm like, this isn't good. Is he so powerful that nobody could have said in 1995, Randy Newman, I'm sorry, but strange things are happening to me?
My next gripe, again, is super petty and super specific. So I'm not going to come off as charismatic with this one if I ever do. Here we go.
Oh,
I am fortunate enough to get to go to press screenings. Typically, the way it works is you go to a press screening, and sometimes it is for press only, where there'll be just 10 or 15 seats filled with, in my case, people that I know who write for outlets. In some cases, it'll be a more general preview screening where there will be a general preview audience and along with space reserved for some critics alongside with that. What I've noticed in the last couple months is the increase in space reserved for influencers.
Mm,
Um, People who are essentially currying favor with the studio by taking pictures and videos and TikToks of themselves at screenings
yeah.
as part of the movie's promotional arm. This is not to speak out against people who, like us, are on YouTube or whatever doing cogent film criticism and people who genuinely take the time to write long form film criticism. I'm not even going to go after the listicle people because you know what, whatever, you do your thing. Your site gets hits and that's great. Again, I want to make sure I'm clear. I'm not criticizing people who write about movies or make videos about movies from a critical perspective or like we're doing now, but more so people who are just very clearly trying to curry favor with studios and don't seem to know or care that they're part of the movie's promotional arm.
Yeah, I had something similar in there. You have the firsthand experience of it. I see it just in my feeds
Yeah.
where I don't like where I can see that your point is bragging that you're seeing something early or that you got a VHS copy of Alien Romulus's trailer. So look at me, I'm special. Not that these perks didn't exist before, but I feel like people just weren't, broadcasting it out like they like back in the day.
The long and short of it is that there should be a code. And I say that with
Yeah.
full knowledge of how douchey it sounds. Like, makes
While we're on kind of influencers slash critics, I've got a couple critic gripes.
real.
So the first one would be being vague on Twitter. So like if somebody writes, I just saw what I think is the worst movie I've ever seen, but then they just leave it at that.
Right.
Like either say what you're talking about or don't write it. Because I don't know if they're wanting you to engage with it, but then they'll never answer you.
Right.
They'll just be like, you'll just be like, well, which movie are you talking about? And they're just like, I can't say. And
Yeah.
it's like, then don't say. Like, what are you doing?
And again, am I probably guilty of that at some point in my history on Twitter? Probably.
But
Um,
there's people who do it all the time.
yeah. My favorite, and by favorite I mean least favorite of the critic vague social media posting.
Yeah,
And this is a flex that critics will do, and that I fucking hate, and I swear I will never do it. Let's say I get to see a movie a couple days or even a couple weeks or months ahead of the general public, right?
yeah,
The tweet that starts with "So glad people are finally getting to see XYZ."
yeah.
Bullshit. I hate it. What you're trying to say is I got to see it months ago. That's great. I get to see movies months in advance, folks, too. I'm not that special.
This is more in their initial reactions on Twitter to movies rather than their reviews. But they'll be so flowery about a movie where it doesn't mean anything anymore. Like it just is a combination of words that have no meaning. Or they act like the movie that they just saw changed their life.
Yeah.
And it's usually the people who do that have their life changed every week.
So here's the thing, and speaking as somebody who does kind of live in this realm. So generally now, when you see a preview screening, they will give you an embargo. They'll give you a review embargo, right? So you can't run a review before this date. What I've noticed now is, and I think this is probably responsible for maybe an uptick in what you're talking about, is there's now a difference between a review embargo, a social media embargo,
Yeah.
and what they're calling a social sentiment embargo, which is posting feelings about the movie of
Sure.
any kind on social media. I wonder if more and more critics, in an effort to circumvent review embargoes as much as possible and start the discussion early
Yeah.
or be ahead of the discussion before it starts because they can't post full reviews yet. I wonder if that flowery language and that injection of adjectives and all those things, this carefully worded statement that encompasses everything that might possibly be in a review in 180 characters or whatever it is. I wonder if that's why they do that.
The last one under the critics header is Gene Siskel used to say this all the time, and it didn't bother me then because he was like one of the 50 critics nationwide. But now that everybody's a critic, it bothers me. When critics will say, like, well, that's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. Like, one thing I don't like about that is tell me what you were going to do with that 2 hours, because I can tell you I'm a pretty busy person, but I definitely waste a lot of hours
Sure.
during a given week or month. So what was so special and precious that you couldn't do to because you were seeing this movie? So that's one. Two is when critics act like it's a personal affront to them that they saw something bad. I want to use a phrase that my mom said to me one time about work when I was complaining that I wasn't working my dream job when I was in my 20s. She said, "It's called work, it's not called fun."
Yeah.
And I say that to critics where it's just like, this is your job. This is what you signed up for. Good, okay, and bad. So expect that you'll have bad movies at your job, and that's part of what you do for a living. So don't act like it's a personal affront that you saw a bad movie or your responsibility was to sit in a chair and look at something.
And just again, speaking as somebody who gets to go to press screenings and writes reviews, sometimes it's work. Sometimes a review, and you can probably tell maybe if depending on how much of my work anybody out there watching this reads. Sometimes writing a review is work, and I don't have a lot to say about a movie, but I have to write my 1,000 words. I have to file a column. That's what I'm doing this week. Like my job, my role in in my F this movie capacity is I need to put out something, and to say that something is not worth your time or something is that's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back, blah blah blah. That's an abdication of your role. That's you just saying like, well, I'm not talented enough a writer or a thinker or a speaker to come up with anything creative to say about this, and it's the movie's fault. And it's not. It's your fault.
Okay, so you had mentioned that you got a press screening for Twisters.
Yeah.
I've been seeing one of those AMC theaters pre-shows interviews
Mhm.
for Twisters recently, and I won't name the interviewer because I think for entertainment journalism she does a good job.
Okay.
But she asked the question of Anthony Ramos and Daisy Edgar Jones, if you could team up with one character from the original Twister for a Twister team, who would it be? And I'm sorry, but that's a question that the interviewer is not interested in the answer about. The people who are being interviewed are not interested in answering, and the people who are watching it are not interested in listening to it. Ask them questions that you give a shit about. Ask them, if I were in that entertainment journalism role, I would be like, so there's a lot of wind, huh? What's it like acting in a lot of wind? So this is directed by Lee Isaac Chung, who did Minari. What Minari touches is he bringing to Twisters? I would like ask things that I'm genuinely curious about.
Yeah.
Um, don't ask who's your dream team of one person from the original and one person from your movie, because no, you don't care. The audience doesn't care. The people asking the question think you're an idiot. I have a couple film Twitter ones.
Okay.
When people see a good movie and say, "We are so back,"
Yeah.
um, if we're so back every week, then we're not back. When people who like something react to other people who don't like something as haters, it makes you sound like an infant. That's one thing. And then also, your reaction to the thing is what's interesting and what's important, not your reaction to other people's reaction to the thing. Everything doesn't have to be liked by everybody.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're a hater if you don't like something, or like we need to get over it, or you need to go easier on it, or whatever. You sound like a moron. And then I have some audience gripes. This is more like movie going related.
Right.
People who walk, this is usually with like teenage girls, I've noticed. But when you walk in pajama pants or have like couch blankets with you, I am like, oh shit, they're going to talk all through this movie. Another one is people who arrive late, even after 25 minutes of trailers. What are you doing? Also, I can't concentrate on anything until you sit down. So you've just ruined 1 minute of the movie for me. People who are audibly disappointed that they're not alone in a theater. So by that, I mean, if I get to the theater, this is very specific, but if
Yeah.
I get to the theater and I'm the first person there, if you're a middle-aged couple who walk in next and they just go, "Oh, we got this place to ourselves." But then you could hear them go, "Oh no, there's one guy back there." Like, I'm sorry I came here to see a movie. I'm sorry that I ruined your cocoon of lovemaking or whatever the fuck you were gonna do. I'm sorry. I had that happen when I went to see Wonder. I was there first, and then this group of girls walked in, and they just go, "Oh, we're by ourselves." And then one girl looked straight at me and goes, "Ugh." Anyways, I feel better. Do you feel better?
Better. I feel better. I feel this is good. It's a healthy purge every now and again. It's nice. Get it all out. And now we can be nice and deferential and stuff for the rest of the year. Everything's good. All right.
So we will be back next week. We are going to do a special episode with the drive-in time machine, where we will take a look at newspaper ads from the past for drive-in theaters, and we will select which drive-in double feature we would choose if given the option of going back in time and being plopped into that drive-in. Until next time.
Don't do any of the things that we complained about in this episode.
Yeah, write it down.
Write it down.
Rewatch the episode and write them down.
Write them all down one by one. And if we catch you, you're out of the Gripehouse.
Mm-hmm. Or you're banned from Gripe Fest at the Gripehouse. You can come back after Gripe Fest.
You don't get a +1 though.
No +1, no free drink ticket.
No free drinking. You're done.